Hello and welcome to Champ Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex, as per usual. Joining me are my two co-hosts, Noel.
What's up?
And Hugh.
Hello.
And we still continue to fail to be able to get everyone in the same room for an episode, at least for a little bit longer. I'm in the middle of moving currently, so I'm out of town this week, probably will be next week as well. But regardless, we're all here, and we've got a lot to talk about this week. We have a hotfix.
Oh yeah, we got
right before Worlds.
I did not expect to be talking about balance changes this week at all. We were like, last week we were like, oh, no balance changes for 2 months. That's weird. And then Riot was like 2 days later, psych. I'm looking at the tweet that announced them right now, and it was like 2 days ago, and Worlds qualifiers are this weekend, so that's cool.
Yes. So without any further ado, I suppose let's start with Worlds. That is definitely the event of the week. We have the Worlds qualifiers happening this weekend, which I think I'm going to kind of hesitantly levy a guess here based on what I've heard from a lot of people, that a lot of people, even in the entrenched LOR community, really don't know a lot about Worlds, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
I certainly know almost nothing. Dragon made it and qualified, and I was like, awesome. I realized at that moment, like, oh my God, I know nothing about any of what's happening right now.
What the process is going to be.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so like a lot of the competitors really didn't know a lot about what the format was going to look like. There's whether it was open or closed deck list, whether the brackets were seeded or random. These were all questions that I saw a lot of people talking about, you know, with like a week before the tournament, which, like, just to that right there, I think is worth levying a bit of criticism at Riot. Which normally I think I look upon them quite fondly. However, this time I actually kind of feel like they're handling the hype around Worlds quite poorly. I hate to say.
I would definitely agree, given that I didn't know it was happening for, I don't know, the entire time almost. Like, there's
it's not happening this weekend. Like, these are just the qualifiers.
Right, but the fact that there's qualifiers are still... It's still content. Like, they should
still
be
very important. Yeah.
There should be an incremental build-up in, press, basically. Like, they should have some amount of hype starting at the very least. Like, the fact that people who actively play this game didn't really know this was happening and don't know much about what's happening is it's not a good look for them.
Yeah, like to be clear, I had to go like do some research to like before this episode to like make sure I knew what was going on.
Totally.
And like I wouldn't be saying wrong things, and it wasn't easy to find.
Yeah.
Like I had to go to like 2 or 3 separate places and hear 2 or 3 separate things and like piece it all together.
Yes.
And all this to be said, the part that really makes me the most upset about this, and this is really the biggest criticism I had, is that Riot had no intention and still has no intention of streaming any amount of the Worlds qualifiers.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it's completely. They were not going to stream it at all. And thankfully, some people in the community have been like that got announced like less than a week ago, I think, and people in the community, I think, have been reaching out, and they're going to try and there's going to be a stream. At least people are trying to make a stream, but it's obviously going to be incomplete. It's going to rely on people streaming their games to the stream so that people can stream it. And this is all being entirely done by third party people who just love the game and think it's ridiculous that the World's qualifications aren't being shown, because it is ridiculous. I mean, these are some of the highest stakes matches
ever.
Of Legends of Runeterra ever being played, and they aren't being streamed. I mean, I hate to sound so negative, but I was really rubbed the wrong way when I found out about that.
Totally.
I thought it was just, like you try so hard, you qualify for Worlds, you play great. A lot of these people have spent thousands of hours laddering, perfecting their craft, and then you go in and you don't quite make it to Worlds. You just barely miss, and nobody even heard your name. Like that just feels a little wrong to me.
Yeah, totally. Do you know the exact structure of the qualifier tournament?
It is closed deck list.
Cool. Oh, interesting.
which is interesting.
That's new,
Definitely not normal for a Legends of Runeterra tournament.
See,
and other than that, I believe it's just a bracket. So, nothing crazy.
Cool. Wow.
Okay. It's nothing crazy,
so
but it's
still pick ban, obviously, but it's just
it.
like you're not going to know their whole 40 when you ban. Interesting. That is.
So that means we could have some people who are going to do that fun, janky little strategy where you say play, the classic example is Endure aggro, but all you do is you take out the champs and put in a single Anivia.
Yeah.
And
fun.
get people with that because they'll be like, I don't want to play. I can totally beat Anivia control, and then you just get them.
Get them, yeah.
With your super wide low to the ground aggro.
There aren't very many decks I can think of right now that rely on their champions little enough to pull that off. But if someone finds a lineup that does it, it could be pretty sweet.
Right. That's why I use the example of Endure aggro because it's the only one I can think of really off the top of my head that makes any sense. But
yeah, totally.
Also, it's almost certainly a smarter idea to just play good decks that you're good with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, to get cute.
But I have to imagine someone's going to try this, and I'm very excited to see how many people do, if any.
And all this to be said, there's still a new patch. There's a lot of new testing going on. It's also kind of interesting because a lot of the prominent voices in the community, are people who are qualified for Worlds who have this now extra motivation to keep all of their testing and whatever they think is the best deck and all that secret, which I also have kind of felt on the ladder. I'm actually not going to lie. Normally, you get, when I just open Twitter, I'll see 10 different deck lists from a bunch of really high ranked Masters players that are like, this deck's good, made these cuts for this reason. And that type of thing really accelerates the community in the right direction. Totally. And I've honestly noticed that there's a lot more people that don't have a great grasp on what the meta is looking like, or maybe there's some weird one-ofs. I just think the meta's moving in general slower, I guess is what I'll say.
Interesting.
I was going to actually bring this up later, but I'm glad you're bringing it up now. I've felt something very similar. I've been trying to figure out what I want to play, and I keep switching back and forth, and nothing feels quite right.
Yeah.
And
no one's telling me what to play.
I don't have Twitter, so I don't just look at Twitter for deck lists normally. But it has definitely felt like the things that I do see online every now and then just don't feel quite. Nothing feels quite there.
Yeah.
And the deck lists that we are getting, it feels like they're a little more universal across the board. When you only see for example one Dark Odious tweet that's has the Nami Zoe deck or whatever, Space Fish, whatever people are calling it, which, by the way, quick aside, Space Fish, excellent name. We knocked it out of the park with this one. Regardless, I think that a lot of these deck lists just kind of look the same, and you're noticing these patterns where these 3 or 4 decks and almost the exact same 40 are just jamming into each other over and over again. And like I said, it just kind of feels like the meta's moving a little bit slower. That's not to say that people are playing bad decks or that the meta isn't moving at all. It certainly is. But I just think I've just kind of noticed it, and I thought that was a little interesting. How much of an effect these top players talking about the game really has an effect on the rest of the ladder.
Oh yeah, 100%. And another part of that is this thing that we've alluded to 3 times but haven't actually talked about, which is this massive balance patch that Riot dropped in a Twitter thread 2 days ago. So 2 days ago, basically, the Play Runeterra account tweeted that with Worlds around the corner, they're releasing a hotfix targeting some of the most dominant decks, disrupting the meta that have been persisted through the release of Rise of the Bandlewood. These updates aim to encourage deck diversity and address a high-impact bug fix. Barring any emergencies, this will be the patch version that World is played on. That's a good clarification. We thought it was going to be the last patch, which is what you told us a week ago when the patch notes came out, but we'll be sharing additional context and details on balance updates moving forward in the 2.15 patch notes next week. And then these are the balance updates. Ruin Runner went from being a 6-4 to a 6-3. Merciless Hunter went from being a 4-3 to a 4-2. Shapestone now went from giving +3/+1 if you had played a landmark to +2/+1. Flawless Duet went from being 1 cost to 2 cost, and Flurry of Fists went from being 3 cost to 4 cost. So this was pretty clearly aimed at Shurima in general, the Sivir Action Flurry deck, and Flawless Duet. Interestingly, I guess Merciless Hunter's in the Demacia version, but I was going to say, interestingly, the Demacia version got away relatively unscathed, which is still kind of true, but some of these cards did hit it. And the last was a bug fix. The Arsenal, which is the 8-drop that comes into play with a bunch of random keywords, can no longer give itself stun.
And can also, and permanent spell shield.
Did it used to be able to do that?
Yeah.
I lost a game to that. Yeah. Actually.
So what did it do? I haven't played the card or seen the card get played.
Imagine spell shield, but it never goes away.
Oh, even when they hit it?
Yeah.
Hit it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just literally...
Oh, because it's on the card, so they I see how the bug worked.
So it just constantly refreshed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Huh, cool.
I did lose one game to that, unfortunately, which is actually, I think, the first time I've lost a Legends of Runeterra game to a bug.
Oh, interesting.
I want to say.
I can still say I have not.
Yeah, fun landmarking.
I've seen it happen a lot. I mean, anytime it happens, you post about it on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
But that's the first time it's ever actually happened to me. So all things considered, given how much I play the game, I feel like I'm running pretty good there.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a pretty massive shakeup to the
Absolutely.
meta and just the game in general. And right before Worlds is quite the choice to make to have this happen at this moment. Just 5 days out from qualifiers when they dropped it or something like that.
So I guess let's ignore Worlds for a moment. Let's pretend that Worlds, that there's no relevant Worlds, there's no relevant tournament this weekend. How do you guys feel about this hotfix in general?
So, I'll just go card by card real quick. Ruin Runner,
that's a good way to do it.
Fine with. I don't know if that particular one was completely necessary, but whatever. I'm good with it. I don't like that card personally.
Just because it's hard to interact with.
It's hard to interact with, and it's really good. Ruin Runner, Merciless Hunter. I would have rather them take away the Fearsome than make it a 4/2, but here we are.
Yeah, it'll eat your opponent's creatures less often now, which is good, probably.
Well, it's in Mystic Shot range, which is just a massive downgrade, but I think that might be good for the game. We'll see. Stone Shape or Shape Stone. This is definitely in my opinion, by far the biggest nerf out of all these 5.
Oh wow, I do not agree.
Holy.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I think so. Anyway, it's just in every deck.
Oh, I see. That's what you mean.
It's the biggest, most impactful nerf.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant the nerf that affected a card's playability the most, which might also be true, but is a little more of a hot take than what you said.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not what I meant. I meant that across the board, it's going to have the greatest impact on the metagame as a whole out of any of the single changes.
3 power was so much on Shapestone. I'm honestly surprised it lasted this long.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And let's see, the next one, Flawless Duet, I'm fine with. It's even more it's a Flawless Duet that costs 2 now. I'm very into that.
Fair enough.
It probably wasn't completely necessary, but I'm okay with this. And last is the Flurry change, which is the only one where I'm actually genuinely kind of upset about.
Yeah,
it's just
like the Sivir, the Demacia version was what has been best recently, and it just kind of feels a tad unnecessary. But I guess they don't want people getting OTK'd, which I guess is fair. But it's really hard to set up, and I don't know.
The only argument I would make in favor of this nerf is that when the card's good, it feels horrible to play against and feels incredibly busted when it's played against you and you die to it. And when it's bad, it's just doesn't really see play, and sometimes someone will use it eventually, and that's okay.
So we just want this card to never be playable, you mean?
I think, yeah, it's one of those cards where if you had to pick between it being played and it not being played, you'd pick it not being played almost always, because when it is being played, it's being played everywhere kind of thing. But I still don't really like this nerf that much personally.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel that.
Go ahead, Noble.
Yeah, the Flawless Duet feels a little I guess we just don't want a Zero Relia to keep being good. But it definitely didn't feel too good. in my opinion. Like it was tier 1, and it's just never really felt to me like Irelia's the problem. I protested when she got her level up changed, and I'll protest now. Like it really feels to me like the other parts of that deck are like Azir, and I guess this is probably definitely a smaller nerf than nerfing Azir or nerfing Dais. But it just feels so bad. Like 2 mana is so much. Like it's really hard. It's going to be really hard to play this card now. But
oh no, I have to pay 2 spell mana for my
for 2 1/1s that die.
Okay, it's an attack. The whole point of the deck is that
I know, but that's synergy. You can make the same argument about like any synergy card, right? Like I don't know.
Okay, there's a lot we could get into there that we don't really have time to get into. I don't think.
I mean, that's fair,
But I don't.
Okay,
we're not going to agree on this point, so let's just.
I guess I'll just say, my initial like gut take reaction was I'm pretty off it. I did not love any of these changes, if I'm going to be brutally honest. But I then had a little bit of a flashback and some clarity of the last time a new set dropped and everybody was playing all the new cards for about 2 weeks, and then everybody remembered Azir Irelia still existed. Yeah. So, given that context, I would like to say I have not played against Azir Irelia since the new cards dropped. I haven't seen anybody playing it. Like it basically felt like the deck didn't exist, but that same thing happened before, so I can't really say confidently that I think it wouldn't necessarily happen again. So with that in mind, all right, I'm okay with some of these nerfs. The Azir Irelia one still, like the Flawless Duet one, it's like that's okay. Like I don't love that. The Ruin Runner nerf, I think, is the most fine here. I think of all the things that probably deserved just like a little bit of a hit to make it a little bit more enjoyable to play against, Ruin Runner was probably the one. It just felt like a dominant card that ended the game a lot of the time, and people didn't like playing against it, and that's almost enough of a reason in and of itself for some cards to get nerfed sometimes. So I didn't hate that. The Flurry of Fists change, you guys kind of touched on a little bit. That one felt unnecessary, but once again, I didn't have a huge protest against it. It felt like one of those cards that was not a super healthy play pattern card. People complained about it when it was good. I think Hugh kind of nailed my feelings on that card pretty much. And the one that I really kind of have a gripe with the most is the Merciless Hunter one. Not because the card didn't need a nerf. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the card didn't really...
It definitely felt like the best of all of the cards that got nerfed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so, given that context, perhaps it's reasonable that I think it got what is definitely the largest nerf on this list. Mm-hmm. So I think it was the best one. I think it also got the largest nerf, but I'm not quite certain the punishment is fit to the crimes here. I really would have liked to have seen a power go off of it or fearsome go off of it before the toughness. The toughness is just so integral towards the play pattern of that card. In general, it makes it way harder to eat anything, and that's like...
Don't we kind of want to make it so the 3-drop isn't like nomming on champions nonstop and surviving? Like, wouldn't we rather this card be a 3-mana removal spell that like trades with our opponent's unit a lot instead of eating it often?
Right, but I think I'll see if...
Yeah, it's certainly much worse now.
I'll see if I get what you might be angling towards, but I think that what Alex is angling towards, I think that I'd rather see the power get knocked off, because at 3 power, it's still quite a good removal spell.
And it's harder to
and now it'll still more frequently be a removal spell as opposed to a thing that gets mystic shotted. Because going from 3 to 2,
that's fair, I guess.
It's such a huge change. Like it can get group shotted now, or group. I think that's what it's called, group shot.
Yeah, that's group shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that basically my my summation here is that I think that the single biggest nerf you can do in Legends of Runeterra, like the single biggest one increment nerf is from 3 toughness to 2. There are so many things that deal 2 damage in this game. It's so much easier to deal 2 damage than 3 damage. So
I agree.
This card got given that's my feeling, I think this card got a really big nerf, and I think that it's pretty like you could easily justify that this card needed a big nerf, and this is the one that should have been made because this card was just way too good.
Yeah.
I'm basically taking the like slightly more middling stance of I think the card was a little bit too good. I think it hadn't really quite found a great home in the post-patch world outside of just basically that exact same Sivir Action deck. And if that deck was getting nerfed in other ways, which it is clearly, I mean, like 2 other cards in the deck got targeted, right? Then I think that basically this card was probably just a little overtuned and didn't need quite so big of a nerf as some other people might argue it did. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I would have just liked to see a slightly smaller nerf. I'm not going to like throw a huge fit about this one because I do think it was some action was probably good.
Yeah, some auction required. Yeah.
Yeah, some action required. Exactly. So that's kind of how I feel about the changes in general. As a whole, I don't hate them. And I almost am in favor of them, if for no reason other than like this is what the general populace wanted the changes to be.
I mean, right? Merciless Hunter has just looked absolutely insane since it was printed.
Since it was spoiled.
Yeah, and the same is true of Rune Runner. Printed is a weird word to use on a digital card game.
But we all know what you mean.
Yeah. But like, and those have just seemed overrate the whole time, and so like it's probably good to have them adjusted. Yeah.
Something that is interesting to me, it's at this point it is very clear that I am outspoken on the opinion that Shapestone was definitely the best card here.
I mean, Shapestone is very, very good. It was all Shurima decks are doing it, so like I don't know. I'm not going to disagree there.
Okay.
I think Shapestone was definitely perhaps the most important work, but maybe it was Merciless Hunter. Merciless Hunter feels like such an essential way for the region to ever actually be able to kill anything. But it makes sense in combination with the old Sivir buff, like that combination just being a little too brutal.
I just think
Merciless, you might say.
Okay. All right. I just think that Shapestone is so easy to go in the fact that it you didn't really care. Like, obviously you cared a little bit that it wasn't getting you +3/+1 all the time, but like you still ran it even if you were just playing like 3 rock hoppers. Like,
yeah.
That's bad. Like that, if you are playing that card, even though your only landmark generation is 3 2-drops in your entire deck.
Yeah, that not
means
great.
The card's overtuned, like way overtuned. That's too much.
Yeah.
That's pretty true. I didn't mention the Shapestone so much because I don't know. I think that nerf is like quite relevant, quite good, but it just didn't feel like that was really quite the pivot point for most of these Shurima decks. Like, you know, an efficient combat trick has always been excellent, right? But it's never really felt that unfair to me, at least.
Unless it's drawing a card. That was the problem.
Yeah. And so, you know, this is another one of those nerfs that I just like kind of saw and I was like, yeah, that's fine. This is probably better than how it was before, even though I might not have requested it in like if I had to send my wish list into Riot for changes, like I probably would not have thought of this one, but I think it's probably correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment. Like, yeah, it was a little overtuned, like old the one that gave +3/+3 in Ephemeral, but now gives +2/+2 in Ephemeral, and like old Pale Cascade, like just a little overtuned. Glad it got brought down. There's more debating. Honestly, I feel like there's more debating on the other ones because they sit in play and you look at how good their stats are for more time. Like, honestly, and like,
that's
but like
fair. When
they play it, you're like, oh, they have the good card. Ouch. I mean, like the fact that like 2 Shapestone is 2 mana to deal 6 damage if you don't block a unit is like pretty obscene.
It's ridiculous.
That's kind of how I was winning most of my games with Shurima decks in general.
Like the amount of times that like my unit got Frostbite and I was like, haha, 1 mana for 3 power. It's like, oh my god.
Oh my god, the amount of times, okay, this interaction has happened to me at least 5 times this patch where I play Merciless Hunter pre-nerf, target their Caitlyn or Draven, go to pull it in combat to kill it and trade. Not Draven, because the Draven decks don't play Brittle Steel, but Merciless Hunter gets Brittle Steel or Frostbitten or whatever, and then
Shapestone.
I Shapestone, and I not only get to still kill Caitlyn.
Now your thing lives.
It lives.
Oh God!
So I actually would like
go next.
I would actually like to have my unit Frostbitten almost. Like it's
Like
almost
a 3
upside.
for 1. Oh God!
Yeah, and that just felt like complete nonsense every time it happened.
That is complete nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're feeling. Yeah. That's totally nonsense.
Yep. And
So
at this point, do we want to maybe move on to the context of worlds, or do we have?
yes, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. So now that we've talked about our feelings on the changes in general, now I'd like to add on the context of this came out. The actual, like, the notes that this was happening came out, I believe, 4 days before the World's qualifiers. So I guess I'll start real quick. So Alex, me, very torn about this because, and here's why. Because as a competitor, if I was competing in Worlds, I would be personally quite upset with this. I think that we talked about earlier, or on the last episode, how the format for Worlds being in a somewhat new environment with some new cards is going to reward a slightly different skill set than it would towards the, like, with a tournament towards the end of the season. And me personally, I feel like I would perform much better in a tournament that I had months to prepare for, or, a month or however long, a longer time span to establish a meta, get settled down into it, learn how to play the decks, right? Whereas other people are really good deck builders, they get on a decks really fast, that type of thing. So it felt like the format was already a little catered towards that type of player. The ones that are just innately going to be a little bit better at deck building, right? Like, there's a lot of different skills in Legends of Runeterra. So if I was playing, I would feel like my win rate when this patch got announced would drop. And that would upset me probably, right? So now it almost feels like we're sort of endorsing that type of player, like that particular archetype, even a little
doubling
bit more,
down.
because because these players, a lot of these players, and I do believe from what I've heard from talking to people who are playing Worlds and seeing things like that, most people were just planning on banning the Sivir deck anyway. And if that was your plan, this is a huge change now, because now you don't have to plan on banning the Sivir deck every time, which you knew everybody was going to bring. Like, this could completely mean that you're bringing 3 separate decks. Like, this could change almost every deck that you were planning on bringing based on the fact that you're no longer going to have to quote unquote permaban this Sivir deck or whatever. Now, having said that, given that that was everyone's plan, I think as a spectator for Worlds, this is a good change. And that's where I'm torn here, because at the end of the day, I think most competitors will agree, your tournament, the best thing you can have for your tournament as a competitor is, especially these exclusive invitationals, is to have them be the best thing for spectators, right? Like, you want as many people as possible watching these things. You want as many people as you can seeing your name playing, right? The more exposure these tournaments get, the more like this is the best thing you could have as a competitor, is your tournament being well-loved and well-liked and fun to watch and get great reviews, right? Everybody wants to watch it. So I think that as a spectator, like, I do think that this patch will make for more interesting games at Worlds as a whole. So I think at the end of the day, even though I wasn't crazy about the balance changes in general, I think I'm ending on that I'm for this, because I think that it will make Worlds in general a much more enjoyable experience to watch and hopefully to play, even if people might not have had quite as much time, because there should still be a little bit more diversity.
Okay. So
That's my rant. What do you guys think?
I agree with you on both points. If I too was a competitor, I would be livid right now.
Totally. Yep.
But
Agreed.
I also agree that this is much better for viewers. The problem with that is that they apparently never planned on allowing viewers.
No, not for Worlds. That's for the qualifiers.
Oh, that's just for the qualifiers.
Yeah, just for the qualifiers.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the qualifiers.
Okay. That's different. I mean, it's still bad, but definitely
Still bad. That's still bad.
Yeah, still less than ideal for sure.
That is a little bit different though. This isn't overall I do kind of think it's positive. I think that more good will come to the community that overall because this change happened. Because at the end of the day, people want to be entertained by, it's a tournament. It's a game they want to watch, and it's a game they play, and they want to have fun watching and playing that game. And this will contribute a lot to both sides of that.
Yeah, I for the large part I agree. Like huge changes. I'm sure there's a good amount of competitors who are happy to not have to play a Sivir deck, to not have to feel like they need to play a Sivir deck and build their whole lineup around Shrima or try to fit a bunch of Merciless Hunters in their lineup or whatever. And it'll definitely be more wide open and interesting, but I think on balance it is probably bad for competitors and good for viewers. And I'm certainly happy about it on ladder. So in that way, it is good.
Yeah, and
so
another thing is that it's, like we said, it's definitely doubling down on a certain kind of player, the more innovative, better at thinking on their feet player who are really good at deck building. And that is, I will say, for me anyway, the more interesting player to watch.
Totally.
Because it's way cooler to see someone who has like broken the meta wide open and found
Playing good decks well. Nah. I want to watch some spicy stuff.
I want to see someone bring a Felios Callista or something just like. I want to see
Absolutely
someone
bonkers.
playing Hecarim or.
I'm not gonna lie, I forgot Callisto was even in the game, dude.
Yeah. Most people do.
Yep.
She doesn't really do anything.
That she
Yeah,
does
and-
not.
She's strictly worse on stats than Merciless Hunter for the same cost and as a champion.
Yeah. Well, not anymore.
That's true.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
That's true. There we go. Callista is still not playable, but she's not.
She's still good in Expedition, I think. Probably.
I'm
I
gonna.
think she's been outscaled there too.
I don't think she was ever that good in Expedition, except for in like beta.
Oh man, I thought she was. I mean, I'm sure you remember, but I thought that Callista, at one point in time, I thought that Callista was the best champion in Expedition.
She's so good in Expedition.
The amount of times I have had someone do the infinite Callista rekindler thing back and forth and beaten them anyway has been too many times for me to call that like
wow,
the best
really?
thing in
Okay.
Expedition.
I've never done it in Lost, and I've done it a lot.
That's fair.
What it's
This
worth.
this is purely anecdotal on both sides. So like,
Yeah, totally.
this is just how I feel about the champion in general. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Regardless, so I mean, we saw. I would say that the general reaction from the community, especially because of the the Worlds thing, was basically like split straight down the middle. I mean, it was hilarious. Like I would be scrolling Twitter and I would see one tweet from a player qualified from Worlds retweeting the thing like, holy crap, like imagine changing a patch 4 days before your Worlds competitor that's a career defining tournament, yada yada, this is the worst idea ever. And then like the next tweet down would be like, thank God I don't have to ban Sivir decks all day, like I can do something that isn't bring 9 Merciless Hunters. Like
Yeah.
man, I really wish they would have announced this earlier. Like thank God, like they could have done this an hour before the tournament happened and I would have been stoked about it.
Yeah, I know. That is similar to the kind of the vibe I've gotten is like a lot of people, everyone would have been happy about this. I think, maybe not every specific change, but this general change if it had come out when the new patch dropped. And
or even a week after.
yeah, I mean, and it was like, what, a week and a half after?
Yeah.
Wait, was it?
It really wasn't too
Has
much
it
later.
only been out that long?
Yeah, I mean, our last episode was first impressions of the set, right?
Yeah, that was
God.
the day the set dropped, so
Yeah, it
it's
was-
only been a week. Yeah.
Never mind. Okay.
So it was less than a week after the patch dropped. It's just that Worlds is so close to the qualifiers, and actual Worlds are just so close to when the set drops, which we talked last week about people having a problem with.
Yeah, no, in my head, for some reason, we were on like week 3 of this patch or something. Like, oh, God.
Yep. Oh, yeah, week 2.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which is like halfway through because the season's only like 4.5 weeks.
true. We're like a fifth of the way through the season already. I mean, time is really flying.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I think that there are going to be people streaming the Worlds qualifiers this weekend. If you are a qualified player or you know someone who is, then you should reach out to the people who are streaming it. I can get you in contact with them. I don't want to announce anything super official or give any links because I'm not sure that everything has been 100% announced, though I know they've been talking about it on Twitter. So, if you're a qualified player, you know someone who is, these people need your perspectives to be streamed to them so that they can actually, produce a reasonable show with the World's qualifications, which I think that most competitors would probably agree that they want that to happen. So there's my PSA. And without
definitely.
further ado, we have a whole lot of really good questions to go into this week. Do you guys have anything else you want to add with Worlds or the patch or the meta in general before we move on?
Not really. No.
All right. So let's start with our question of the week. This one comes from Mr. Purple, also known as Ben. They ask, if Expeditions had a ranked mode, would you play it over Constructed? Let's start with Noble.
Absolutely. Moving on. I mean, I love Expedition. Honestly, reading this question, I was like, wow, I should really play some more Expedition. And the honest truth is, I don't really have time to because I want to climb. And I need to spend my time doing that. Currently still in, I think I just barely got into gold because I dropped all the way down because I was in platinum last season.
Run it up.
So we're really needing to grind the whole way up. But
what's the meta look like in Silver? Can I ask real quick?
my most recent game was against I've played against some Poppy decks that aren't Demacia, like a lot like Bandle City Poppy. I've played against 3 times in the last little bit. I've been playing a lot of. The real answer is it hasn't really mattered because none of them can beat Scion, so I don't remember what any of them are. They just can't beat the 10-6. So I did get it mini morphed for the first time recently and was sad about it, and then still won
stings
Oh,
on that turn anyway. So that was cool.
Okay. I know for me personally, the answer is also absolutely 100% yes.
Yep.
Expedition, any limited format in every card game I've ever played,
So sick.
whether Hearthstone, Arena, Magic, just Draft. It's just always been my favorite thing to do.
When you said Arena, I thought you were talking about the Magic the Gathering online client, and so I thought you said Hearthstone, Magic client, or Magic, and I was like, Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that is not what I meant. But limited has just always been my favorite thing to do in all the games I've ever played, and this game is no exception. But like Noble said, it's a pretty big time sink, especially because you are allowed 2 runs in each
Thing, yeah.
entry. So to get your prizes, I mean, you're just gonna play both runs, unless you hit 7 wins on the first one, and then you can.
Which I do half the time.
I'm not gonna say I do it that often, but definitely a non-zero amount of the time.
I'm excellent at either going 7,
7-0
getting
or
7
0-7.
wins or 0-2 in the first one. So
Oh yeah.
that's good.
That's about par for the course for Expedition. You kind of take a stab at something and you're like, oh yeah, if we get there, this is going to be sick. And then you look at your deck at the end and it's either got 8 Mist Wraiths or it's got 1 Mist Wraith, 3 Mist Call. And you're like, oh, how did we get here?
Oh yeah, we've all seen some absolute duds.
Yeah. But the formula is usually good enough that the decks are usually pretty good. And so I think that a ranked version would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that, okay, so I will say, Limited, I have this thing where pretty much any time I get into a new card game, I start by playing whatever the limited mode is. I did it with Hearthstone. When I started playing Hearthstone, I just basically only played Arena. When I started playing Magic, I got into Magic by playing Draft. When I started playing Legends of Runeterra, I got into Legends of Runeterra by playing Expedition. And I think that Legends of Runeterra's Expedition is like maybe my favorite limited format in any game. Just like the way it's done, I think is excellent. I love the way it's operated. I think the games are really fun and interesting, and it was without a doubt like how I fell in love with Legends of Runeterra was through Expedition. That being said, usually the spike in me eventually decides that there's no ranked mode, and I want to play serious games and yada yada, and then I'll start playing Constructed.
I had trouble getting Alex to play Constructed at first. Like, I remember coming in and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, he's playing Legendary. I was like, sweet. And I was like, dude, this is Expedition. He's like, I know, it's awesome. And I was like, we have to grind ranked, Alex.
Yeah, I was like dragging my feet at first because the Expedition mode was just so sick.
So,
but like,
so sweet.
Eventually, like I do, once I get into the Constructed, I really do get into it. Like, at this point in my Legends of Runeterra career, I think I would I'm more likely to play Constructed ranked games than I would of Expedition ranked games, at least like right now, probably. And that's generally especially because I like focusing on the like tournament side of things. I've been like putting in a keen eye on that type of thing. But I would absolutely be playing Expedition ranked, especially if it had like the same type of like world's qualification points, ladder points, that type of thing that the Constructed ladder does. And Magic Arena has separate ladders for limited and ranked and Constructed. I feel like it wouldn't be all that hard to implement some form of competitive limited mode in Legends of Runeterra. I don't really know what it would look like, but I feel like just a ladder, like a separate Expedition ladder, would be like very easy to do. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it can't be that hard, right? Like,
yeah, and at that point we'd probably just do away with the double attempt thing. And keep that for normals, but for ranked, just make a single deck and you play with that deck. Probably,
because the double attempt thing doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
You'd probably get less rewards and thus wouldn't have to pay for them.
Yeah, it's really sad. I don't know. So there would probably have to be a like slight adjustment to exactly how it worked, and I do really like how the format works. And don't get me wrong, I think that if people at Riot sat down and were like, we should make an Expedition ranked mode, like they'd be able to talk it out for an hour and come up with a phenomenal solution, right? So I would love to see one implemented. I think it would be sweet. I would definitely play it. I would definitely play it a lot, I think, and it would be a nice change of pace, exactly, because like nowadays, like especially when I'm trying to climb as high as I can, try to make a real push for a competitive spot this season, especially because this is the first season where the world's points are going to wrap over into next year, right? So these ladder points matter a lot all of a sudden again. So it just feels like I don't have time to play Expedition, and I wish I did. I mean, I have 47, I think, right now, Expedition tokens that I have not used.
Oh my god.
And there were weeks where, like, I remember when I started playing the game, like, I would be the thing that I was most excited for from my like weekly vault was the Expedition tokens, so that I could go play get an Expedition round for free. And today, I went to craft cards, and I was like, oh my god, I am out of epic wildcards. Like, I somehow ran out of epic wildcards before my champion wildcards, by the way.
I think that's true for everyone, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it happens weirdly. It happens a lot. Because a lot of decks have like 10 epics.
I just went into Expedition and just bought in with a token and then retired instantly and got like an epic capsule. I just did that 3 times so that and just like spiked a couple random epic wildcards and then used them. Like,
oh, that's crazy because you had so many.
So that's what I've felt been sort of resigned to do with my Expedition tokens, just because it's been that long since I felt like I had the time to like sit down and play the Expeditions I want to. And it's not like I haven't played an Expedition in 47 weeks or however many weeks. I think it might be 37. I think it wasn't 47. But I just haven't played Expeditions in that many weeks. Like, I've played some of them, but I just don't have the general amount of time that I wish I did to do it. All right. Let's move on to our next question. It comes from Dragon. They ask, now that a week has passed, what do you feel are the most overrated and underrated cards from the new expansion based on initial impressions? For me, Scion was under and Aloof was over. All right, that's an interesting take. I think that, real quick, Scion, people were way too low on Scion, me included. I thought that
absolutely.
it just wasn't going to be as good as Jinx at all.
So wrong about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out
He's always flipped.
The whole deck changed a lot, and if you're gonna play the discard aggro shell, the a bunch of really small units, and I still think that Jinx is probably better because this Scion deck, you can't empty your hand.
Oh yeah, this is the only discard deck I've ever played where I just have 10 cards in it, all the time. And I think I've said that a couple times, but all of the different ones that when they're discarded replace themselves in some way is so insane. Another hugely underrated card for me is Lost Soul. I looked at that card and I was like, this card sucks. But it's just insane. Someone described it on Twitter as being it flips between being Squee, and a removal spell. And Squee is a magic card that every turn picks itself up from your discard back into your hands. You can just keep discarding it, and that's exactly how this card feels. It just you discard it into a 4-drop that you actively want to play, which dies into another thing in your hand, and you just keep going. Just
one Lost Soul just makes infinite gas. It is ridiculous.
I was hanging out with a Scion in my hand, and my opponent played an Aloof Travelers, and I was like, no! And then I ripped a Lost Soul that it discarded, making the unit, and I was like, oh yeah, baby.
Quick side note, that interaction actually happens a lot when you're playing that deck, and it's one of the best reasons towards the later part of the game. If you're the Aloof Travelers deck, you really want to find the time when they play their I don't even know what the name of the card, Tormented Soul,
Twin Blade Revenant, I believe.
Yeah, it's that
Twin Blade Revenant. That's what it is. Thank you. So because you really want to try and find a time where you can Aloof Travelers their Scion, or their Augmented Experimenters. A lot of the lists play that too. And it's really hard to do because that card is generally awful because of the existence of Lost Souls. So that's my PSA for when you're playing discard versus Bandle City decks. You really want to try and keep the 8 mana card in your hand for as long as you need to before you put your Scion onto the field.
That makes sense.
So that it doesn't get sniped. So back to the cards that I think were over and underrated. Okay, my first card that I think is overrated, and I never thought I'd say this, is the Bandle Tree. So I kind of shit on this card last week.
Wait, you mean underrated?
I think it's overrated.
Okay.
At this point. Okay, so to be clear, I think, when we saw that card, we all thought it was kind of a joke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then it came out, and it turned out it was actually quite good. People were playing it. It was in a lot of decks. There was a lot of talk about it on Twitter. And it is actually, it was actually a pretty significant chunk of the meta. A couple people took it to rank 1 on the ladder with various Bandle Tree piles. And I was kind of fretting it for the last couple days because I saw these decks at the top of ladder. I was like, oh god, it's another card I called unplayable, and it's taking the ladder by storm. Here we go again. But it ended up, I think right now, and it's still kind of early, so I could still be wrong, but I think right now people are kind of realizing that it's just better to go wide and just play Poppy and attack than it is to actually win the game with the Bandle Tree. And there's still quite a bit of Bandle Tree floating around right now, but I'm going to make the bold prediction that card is basically just going to be everybody's going to have cut it in by the time we're talking in next week or the week after. So I think that card is currently overrated.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah. It went from appropriately rated as bad to overrated as not bad.
Yeah, basically. I think it, and to be clear, I'm still quite a bit higher on it than I was initially. The card is not awful. The fact that you can just have this sort of looming win condition that you don't have to do any, you don't have to worry about attacking. You can just block and then play this Bandle tree on 8 or whatever. And it does win the game faster than I think any of us thought it would. Like, it almost always comes down and has 7 or 8 on it.
Weirdly,
Like,
I haven't
the
seen a
lowest
lot
I've
of that
ever
in
seen
silver
is
and
6.
gold, so I wouldn't know. I don't think I've seen.
It's quite good. Like, it really does win the game.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
But I do think it is worse than just playing Poppy and attacking, which I think people are kind of figuring out. Like, there's a lot of like Lulu Poppy floating around right now. Poppy is just like really good. Right
I know. Me and Hugh have known the whole time on that one. I kind of feel like I underrated Nami a little bit. Like, I knew she was good, but boy, is that champion powerful. It's so hard to lose when they're flipped. Like, I've killed my opponent from such absurd life totals. Like, the card is very, very good.
Nami is so sick. I love that card. It's crazy how hard it is to play against her too. Like, and she flips so fast. I mean, it's crazy. She's always flipped, and she's insanely hard to play against when she's on the field and flipped.
I like that you really have to play purposefully to flip her. Like, you have to not play units for the first 3 turns of the game, because on turn 3 you want to play a 3-cost spell and then bank the mana, and then on the next turn play a 1-cost spell, then play Nami so she's flipped. So you want to try to flip her 4 or 5, which means really not playing a lot of units. But it's doable.
What about your overrated card?
My overrated card is probably that's a hard question to answer.
It is.
Do you have one for me, Hugh? What are you looking at me like?
I mean, I'm
like
waiting.
You're remembering a card I rated.
No, I know my answer is why. I'm waiting to see if you see what I'm gonna say. What I'm gonna say.
Well, let's just go to Hugh.
Yeah,
Take it.
yeah.
What do you think, Hugh?
I hate to say it, but I think one of the most overrated cards going into this has been Caitlyn.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I still think the card individually, like just the card Caitlyn, is still like a good card. The problem is her decks suck right now.
Yeah.
I have not seen any good deck with Caitlyn in it yet.
When playing Zoe Nami or Fizz Nami, I've gotten absolutely destroyed by a bunch of flash bombs, just like murdering all my little elusive creatures. But other than that, I just have not seen them be at all impressive. 2 cards that stood out to me in the spoiler that I don't know if we necessarily got to talk to about were Undercover Officer and the 2-drop from Bandle City that makes a Hungry Owlcat whenever it connects. And both of those struck me as
so messed up, dude.
2-drop elusives that generate value. And both of those have definitely performed.
Oh, yeah.
Sting
For me
Officer,
and my opponents.
Really good.
Bandle City Commando, I think, is the one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Bandle City
That
Commando is so stupid.
Yeah. It's
Disgusting.
It just makes 1-drops that are just totally reasonable to play.
I literally won a game today because I saw all 3 copies of my Bandle City Commandos.
And just played so many Hungry Owlcats.
I played 15 of them. Because
That's so many Owlcats.
Because all I did was I kept running Owlcats into their board, and they were like, whatever, I'll block these. And they did. And then whatever, I'll block these. And they did again.
Aurelia effect.
And then they just blocked them for the 3rd wave, and they were like, wait a second, this is starting to stick.
Build your own Azir Aurelia.
Oh my god.
Waved of
that card
Owlcats.
is so absurd. That and Bandle City Mayor are like the 2 cards that, in my opinion, are just like putting the whole of Bandle City on their back.
Bandle City Mayor is absolutely heinous.
It's a 3-mana 2/2
is-
that like makes all your multi-region cards cost 1 less, right?
And it makes you a multi-region card.
In your hand when you play it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Oh.
It does everything.
I feel like I overrated the 2 different 2-drops that behold different cards, like the 2-mana 2/1 that looks at the...
Oh, the 3 different categories? I think that card's very solid. I don't know.
Yeah, I just expected to see a lot more of it than I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a 3 of in pretty much all the Bandle City decks, but like,
It's definitely not. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it is definitely a very solid card.
It hasn't played quite as well as I would have thought either. I think I'll agree with Noble there. Like, I see it a lot, but it's yet to really impress me. Also, like, Pokey Stick. I mean, the Bandle City cards are just like way better than I thought they would be in general. Like, they just kind of play together like really well. The just general Bandle City package feels very strong.
I mean, a good chunk of, thankfully for us, since a good chunk of these cards didn't exist in spoilers by the time we had recorded that episode.
Yeah.
So thankfully we were spared from some inevitable bad takes.
Yeah.
I will say that I think that we would have all figured out Pokey Stick is gross because Vile Feast is also insane, and it's very similar like value levels.
The Vile Feast, yeah.
Yeah.
Getting poked with a stick definitely feels bad.
I absolutely agree it is better than Vile Feast, but like 1 health and a 1/1 is somewhat comparable to draw a card.
I actually don't think it's better than Vile Feast. Vile Feast just seems better against aggro, and like that's what I want my... It depends on the deck, I guess, but I do tend to think Vile Feast is better. But
yeah, okay.
Vile Feast is like much better is like quite a bit better against aggro. But like for me, the thing is that like my Pokey Stick isn't just a complete miss against like Sen of Veigar or whatever.
Yeah,
like I can just jam my Pokey Stick and draw a new card, and like that's really nice because man, is Vile Feast like completely awful in the matchups it's awful in.
That's fair. Yeah,
a lot of the time.
It's kind of a toss up.
Also, hitting spell shields with Pokey Stick is like one of the most satisfying things there is.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, you think you're safe? Poke.
Poke.
I truly love how Yordles are just absolute agents of chaos.
Oh, yeah.
It's also just like one of the best named cards because it's so, like, it's just so accurate, you know? It's like, what am I
like, I play my Legion's Grenadier, and they're like, Pokey. You're like, God damn it.
Poke it. They poke it.
Or sorry, that one doesn't tell you. Legion Saboteur.
Yeah, they really, really knocked it out of the park with the flavor of the Yordles in general.
Yeah.
And the Bandle City and all
really
the, like how everything is just like casually dumb but powerful.
Yeah. I was dedicating to getting out of silver, so like I can actually play some Bandle City cards now that I've crested that one. But I was just I need to just play Draven. Like really, I was like, I just need to play the best win rate deck until I can because I just need to get so high. Like it's so much Legends of Runeterra I need to play. I can't be screwing around with poking things with sticks.
Well, the Pokey Stick decks are really good, but regardless, I think this segues perfectly into our next question from Keon Spy, who asks, who is your favorite Yordle? Can be anyone, even the ones that are not yet in the game. What do you think, Hugh? Who's your favorite Yordle?
It always has been and always will be Veigar, I think, unless there's definitely some champions that like I'm probably forgetting are Yordles, but like I adore Veigar. He's just such an absolute goober.
Evil.
Yeah, it's just like he's just oh god, it's great.
I would like to make a quick interjection. The Veigar level up animation might be my favorite one in the game. Where he's like climbing up all the minions to get into his super suit. It's so good.
Yeah. Luckily, I haven't seen that many Veigars level, so only seen one.
Oh, I've seen like 7.
You've been playing it?
No.
You just play against that deck a lot? Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of everywhere.
My favorite is probably Chump Wump. It's a good Yordle. Like his voice lines. He's hanging out.
That's an interesting
He's a big lad. No. Honestly, I think it's probably Poppy. I just like Poppy's vibe. The big hammer is just absolutely hilarious. There's nothing I love more in League of Legends than just like sending some random top laner to the other side of the map. Like I just like it.
That's a good one.
Poppy's great.
Yeah, I think that. So I didn't really know that Fizz was a Yordle.
Yeah.
Until recently, but given that recent knowledge, I think that my favorite Yordle is Fizz.
Yeah, that makes sense. If a Mumu is a mummy Yordle, then that's my pick. So
he could be.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty small. Like,
yeah.
He can't really be a human, right? Like, he
probably
must
not.
be a Yordle mummy.
That's what I'm saying, man.
He could just be a child.
Oh gosh, that's why he's crying all the time. Oh no,
he's a sad mummy. But yeah, I think Fizz is really cool. Like, I really like that character in League of Legends. One of the first ones that I kind of gravitated towards, and so I think his card in the Legends of Runeterra is also really sick. I really just like the Fizz cards in general. I'm a big fan of those like tempo-y strategies. If only Zoe was a Yordle.
Yep.
All right,
She feels like one. She has Yordle vibes.
Yeah. True, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Our next question comes from Karenol. They ask, which of the new champs do you expect to pop off the hardest at Worlds? What do you think, Hugh?
Ooh, which of the new champs? I mean, I feel like the correct answer is probably Scion. Like, that deck is so consistent and so just... It's just so good. It's so... Everything about it is just good.
Yeah.
Like, it always has... It never runs out of gas.
Yeah.
On turn 7, it will drop a creature that will kill you if you don't mini-morph or hush or the stress defense it.
Yeah. And you always have it.
You always have it.
So ridiculous.
And even when you don't have it, your hand has 10 cards in it always.
Wait, if you stress defense it, does it come back not as a 10-6?
No,
No, it
it'll
comes back as a 10-6.
Yeah.
Oh, but it'll
it
just
doesn't hit for 10.
the first time. Yeah, okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
and it also doesn't die into the thing that rallies
Yeah.
because it's a 1/6 now.
No, it doesn't remove its types. It doesn't remove its abilities. It still dies into the
No, I know, but like because it's a 1/6, they
Oh.
can block it with anything that has less than 6 power.
Oh, I see, and it won't die. I got you. I
Yeah,
got you.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You can
I
keep
think
their
that-
unit alive in order to outplay them. Yeah.
I think that the secret answer is hidden in the question. The champion most likely to poppy off, I think, is actually Poppy.
That's
Like,
reasonable.
I think that Scion is like. I think that this Scion deck is excellent. Don't get me wrong. I expect to see a lot of copies of it, but I think that particular deck is kind of at least well figured out. Like, whereas I think these Poppy decks can go in a million different directions, and I'm not sure that we have the best one yet. I feel like if anything, the most likely like quote unquote best deck for this tournament is going to be whatever the best Poppy deck that somebody figures out is.
That makes sense.
I have to.
The card is very
that's kind
powerful.
of my theory.
I am inclined to agree.
I could also see it being Veigar Senna. Like, I could see you building a really good lineup where that deck is just absolutely excellent.
That deck is really good.
Yeah, kind of an anti-aggro, scorched earthy kind of lineup, and not the card, just like a kill all the
I'm
things.
still not entirely convinced that the best version of that deck plays Veigar, but we'll
Me
see.
neither, honestly.
That's reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, because Senna
I
by
think
herself is so good.
I think that it does need to play some number of Veigar, but I'm not certain that it needs to be like all 3 copies. I mean, the fact that he makes the darkness is pretty good, but he's just so bad as like a turn 3 play.
Turn
and
4.
He's a 4
like,
mana.
Yeah, turn 4. Sorry, he's 4 mana. He's just so bad as like a turn 4 play. He doesn't affect the board. The darkness that he makes doesn't like. It's this weird balance between I don't want to play my Veigar until like turn 10. And I want to play my Veigar early so that my darknesses start ramping.
Yeah.
I think the real like kind of hidden secret with that deck is that you really only need your darknesses to deal like 3 or 4 damage before they start hitting all the things that you kind of want to care about.
Totally.
And I think that Veigar is just like much less of like an Ezreal-esque champion where you can like kind of play it early and use his pressure to kind of like control the board and then flips into a win con. I really think he's basically just a win con. Like, I really
You wanted
don't
to
think
get
that,
it to 3 or 4 and play 3 or 4 darknesses, and then
yeah, and play the 6 mana 4/5 with lifesteal that copies the darkness at Nexus. I can't remember the name off the top of my head,
I
unfortunately.
can't either.
that card is very good though.
But like, yeah, that card is gonna like flip your Veigars in and of itself. Basically, like you really need the card to flip because it's kind of how you win most of the games. But he's just so bad before then that it's kind of rough.
Totally.
That's kind of what makes me want to think that maybe he's not. Maybe we shouldn't be playing all 3 of them. But I haven't really seen any lists experimenting with anything like that. So.
And I think the last champion I would mention is Nami. Like, I do think that there are going to be some good Nami builds at Worlds, and I would not be surprised to see Nami Burblefish nonsense be very
Space
prevalent.
Fish is so good.
Yeah.
Especially because I
So
think
good.
the thing that is holding Nami back the most currently is player skill.
Yeah.
And when you go to the place where all the players are good, she's much more likely to shine.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get to our next question here. This one comes from Leovold. They ask, with the surprise release of some very much needed nerfs yesterday that I'm assuming were mentioned in the show, you are correct, they were, Worlds is going to be shook up right before it takes place, which makes me feel bad for the participants. Do you think these hotfix nerfs are going to be a mainstay in the future of LOR? Should they be? Why or why not?
Oh, God.
I guess I'll go ahead and take the first crack at this. So, I think that these hotfix nerfs are not going to be a mainstay of LOR. However, I would have no problems if they were. I think more balance changes is almost always better than less, unless you take the extreme. Like, if you just never balance update your game, then you can do that, I suppose. But I really don't think that's anywhere near the direction this particular game should go.
Yeah, totally.
So I think that if we saw more hotfixes, I would be okay with it. Just like, wake up one morning and say, hey guys, Azir Irelia had a 57% win rate for the last week. So today, Dunekeeper has one less power. You could just like wake up to these like very small changes that are just kind of trying to just barely keep everything in line. I'd be totally fine with that, to be honest. I think it would keep the game interesting and fresh, and it wouldn't make huge sweeping changes every time. But I really think that's unlikely, to be honest. I think that the only reason we got this hotfix is because people were complaining and because they needed, if they were going to do it, they had to do it before Worlds.
Absolutely.
And you definitely can't do it any later. And so I think they did it specifically this time because there's a tournament coming up and they had to do it on exactly this schedule. Yep. Though I really think that we're probably going to get more scheduled balance updates like we've had in the past.
Agreed. Like, I'm glad that this is something that they're willing to do, right? It's really good that this is something they're willing to have in their toolkit, and I hope they use it as little as possible. Is kind of my take in brief on it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. However, Alex said the thing about like basically the example of they changed just Dunekeeper 1 week. I actually really like that example because if they did just do a small little change to a single card that was maybe a problem weekly or bi-weekly, like that's very different in my mind to a hotfix. In my head, a hotfix is something like, oh God, guys, we messed up so bad. We need to emergency fix this now, and it's a big it's a hotfix. Like they slapped a Band-Aid on a gaping wound because they needed the game to survive for another week. But what you mentioned, the single change weekly or whatever, I think that is just much more preferable. I think that's I agree that every game generally gets better with more frequent balance changes, as long as they are scheduled pretty regularly. Like, yeah, I'm okay with here and there just throwing a little something in, but I think that if we keep up a frequent but regular schedule is the best place to be.
Absolutely agree. You can't go crazy with them. Like, I don't want to craft a deck and then because a Dunekeeper gets nerfed and then 4 hours later be like, oh sorry, now we need to nerf Mystic. I don't want anything like that. But
cut out a little bit for a second there, Alex.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, these changes need to be not so regular, right? Like, if you're going to have hotfixes, they need to be like once every other week or something. Like, I do not want every single day to wake up to a new change and have to refigure out the meta every time. So
yeah, and as long as the hotfixes aren't large amounts of cards at the same time, like that's another problem. Correct. But yeah.
All right, our last question for the week comes from Snot Info Blah. They ask, which champ is most sleeper OP, and we just haven't found the right deck for them? Any of them? Well, what do you guys think? Let's start with Noble.
I feel like Tristana could be really good. I think that card is powerful and has the buffing all of the units that you play, because she gives herself +1+0 and the unit you play +1+0, right? I haven't seen her in play, which is why I think she's a sleeper. But I do think she's quite powerful and could lead to some really good, like we were just talking about how a lot of these Bandle City cards do a pretty good beatdown impression, especially with things like Hungry Owl Cats from your commando, and it just seems like that could work. I'd be interested in trying. Like the place I'm going to start is Tristana Poppy probably, and trying to beat down with Bandle City. So
yeah, I am surprised at how quickly Ziggs Talia has exploded and then completely disappeared. Because it looks like it is anywhere on the ladder anymore. And it was like, that's what I actually took. I went from gold 4 to plat 4 in like a day with just that deck. Because it was so much fun. I love Ziggs. I love playing dumb little landmarks that like are actually good. And
totally, yeah.
And
boy, have I got the deck for you.
Ziggs Talia?
No, it is Ziggs Xerath. And this is my answer. And I think maybe this isn't quite fair because I've seen like this deck really popped up a lot. Yes, sort of towards the end of yesterday and today. So maybe I'm like just a little bit behind, but I still feel like I'm generally on the upswing of this deck. I think Ziggs Xerath, I wanted to talk about it in the earlier question that Karen asked with the pop off at Worlds, but I figured I'd save it till now. I think Ziggs Xerath is so good. It has impressed me every single time I've seen it. And I've been playing a lot of decks on ladder, and I've been playing a lot of discard. I played a lot of Spacefish. I've been playing some Bandle City decks, like Poppy decks, and I cannot seem to find a good matchup against this Xerath Ziggs deck. Like, these landmarks, the control package with the arsenal, especially, the arsenal is completely unbeatable for most of the decks in the meta.
It's huge.
And that deck is very, very real. I have yet to actually play any games with it because I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I've just been playing other things, but that is the deck that I am probably going to be playing tonight. Like, I think that it's like number 2 on the ladder or something right now at the time we're recording this. A lot of them have been playing Zillion too, some like Ziggs Xerath Zillion, and the Zillion has really impressed me in that deck as well. Like a 1 or 2 of Zillion has just looked great every time I've seen it, which is wild to me because Zillion has always been kind of this meme bad card that looks better than it is, but he actually has looked good to me. Granted, I've only played against him, but even when they played it and it was a 2-mana 1/4 that just like basically sat there most of the time, like when they draw 1 time bomb, I'd be playing this like Bandle City deck and they draw 1 time bomb and wipe my whole board with a Xerath. Like, that just happens a lot. And then there's all the stun cards. It has a lot of game against discard. I think in particular it's really good. I think it's really good against the Bandle City decks. Like I said, I think it's got a lot of game against Spacefish too, though I think that's probably its hardest matchup. I think that deck is very, very good, and I will be surprised if we don't see more of it in the future. I don't think it's a splash in the pan.
I am so happy you brought that deck up because I thought that was a crazy fever dream I had 4 days ago where I played against that exact deck one time. It's the only time I've ever seen it. Haven't seen it since. And I got absolutely ruined by it. And I was like,
this sounds sweet.
Xerath is messed up.
I knew Xerath messed up. It was Zillion. Like you said, Zillion did things, and I was so not ready for Zillion to do things.
Yeah.
And I've
lost more games to Zillion in the last 12 hours than I have in my Legends of Runeterra career.
How many times have you played against this deck? My God.
Like, probably at least 10.
Oh my God.
In the last 12 hours.
Wow.
Like,
okay, so it's really blown up.
It is really taking off.
Okay.
Like, that's why I say, like, maybe this doesn't quite qualify for the sleeper deck answer anymore because it's, like, really taking off.
Oh, it's good. The people should know. Yeah.
Yeah, the people need to know. I actually, like, I almost think this deck is a better answer for which champ do I expect to pop off at Worlds. But
totally.
I really think that deck is going to be in Worlds in droves. I think it's a very well-positioned deck against the meta, and it's, like, one of the only things that I've, like, looked at and confidently thought that it beats Bandle City decks.
Totally. And we'll put that deck in the description of the deck list, in the description of this video, or wherever you're watching this.
Yeah, definitely.
That code will be findable, or failing that on our Discord. We'll get it posted.
And that is the last question for the week. As a real quick sum up, I've been playing a lot of this patch, and it is just so much fun.
Oh, absolute blast.
I've been I'm in the middle of moving, so I don't have a job right now, which is the best. So I've played like 9 or 10 hours of Legends of Runeterra a day for like the last 3 or 4 days, and I've just had a blast. Like the games are all really fun. The decks are super interesting. I played a bunch of discard. I've basically went from plat to diamond with only discard, and then I've been experimenting around. All the decks feel good. All the decks feel fresh. So like, I've just been really enjoying the game. On a quick aside there.
Yeah, no, it's felt great. I haven't got to play quite as much because I've been doing some wild trip things, getting stranded in Seattle and the like. But in general, that actually gave me a chance to actually play like 10 games, so that was cool. But steadily climbing up through the lower ranks, and I've been mostly playing discard, but I've been loving it too. What have you been playing
The
here?
discard deck is so fun. I love that deck.
I keep switching. The 2 decks I've settled on the longest were Ziggs Talia for that stretch into Plat, and now Lulu Poppy because I love Poppy so much.
Yeah. That's fair.
The Lulu Poppy deck is like the other deck that's popped up in the last like day that I think is like really good. I've been playing a little bit of that one too. Just the Poppy decks in general. That's the thing I'm most excited for Worlds, is to see which the best Poppy deck is, because every time I see a Poppy deck, I'm like, okay, let's see what Poppy pile this is, and they all look crazy different and they all look good. So
the card's just so powerful.
Yeah. All right. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we close this one up for the day?
Nope, nothing here.
I'm good.
Alrighty. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Champ Select. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you aren't a member of our Discord, why not? You absolutely should join our Discord. There's a link in the description of whatever platform you're currently listening to this on, as well as a link to all of our other social medias where you can follow us. And without further ado, we will see you all on the next episode of Champ Select. Bye-bye.